So the game that we're making is called RuneScape Idle Adventures. It's what's called an idle game, which is similar to the game that I made previously called Adventure Capitalist, which is a game that you actually don't have to play it that much in order to make a lot of progress. It actually kind of plays itself. But in this case with Idle Adventures, we want to introduce a lot of storyline and cool quests and gear and combat and other things that other idle games don't necessarily have right now. And so that's kind of the elevator pitch of what we're making. And it's really difficult to explain, mostly because it sounds really weird on paper. What an idle game is it's a game that only requires you to make a couple of small decisions and to click a couple of things, and then you can actually leave it, and the game will play itself. And you can come back later. Now, that sounds really weird because, I mean, most games you're expected to play them. But the nice thing about idle games is that they're very, very schedule friendly. Sometimes we call them zero-player games. They're a kind of game that you can have going like while you're doing something else. Like maybe you're playing a different game and you just need a momentary distraction, or maybe you need something that like you can pull it at a bus stop and play for like 30 to 45 seconds. And so idle games have this really great like progression, and they're kind of oddly addicting and really satisfying to play, and we feel that they actually complement the RuneScape kind of play style really, really well. So that's why we're kind of focusing in on it. Idle games sort of started as a simplification of RPGs. So people who liked RPGs took them, made them simpler, and then wound up with what we now call idle games. And so they have their roots in RPGs, and so introducing more RPG mechanics into them and storyline and all this other cool stuff is actually quite natural. They fit together quite well. There's sort of two things that we're going for. One, the reason why Jagex approached Hyper Hippo to make the game was because Adventure Capitalist is basically, it's one of, if not the most successful idle game right now in the market. And they approached us, they said, we want you to kind of do that magic, but for our fans, right? Now, if we're going to do something for fans of the game, we need to be like really authentic. Like the game has to be like structured, and the lore and the story and everything just has to resonate just right. Otherwise, like fans just won't enjoy it. They'll reject it. It won't feel right. So I want to make a game that an idle player will go, hey, this is a great idle game. It's got a cool story. And then I want a hardcore RuneScape fan to go, this is definitely RuneScape. I mean, it's not walking around in a world, but it's definitely like, it has all the humor and the epic storylines that a RuneScape game should have. Yeah, absolutely. I think like there are elements to our story which are like really secret right now because they actually have implications for the MMO as well. And the only way I can imagine them working is like if there were expansions, or if there was like this kind of like DLC kind of esque components to the game. I mean, ultimately, I do want to make clear that this is a free-to-play game, and players won't necessarily be gated. Like, we're not going to make you pay to get more of the game. We're just going to keep updating it and have, cool stuff happen. And when something big happens in the MMO, we're looking forward to doing like events in our own game for it. We're targeting PC for this spring. We're targeting Steam for our launch platform, and then shortly thereafter, I can't give exact specifics yet, but shortly after, we'll be going to mobile as well. And then from there, Adventure Capitalist is on a bunch of platforms that we've become very familiar and friendly with, and so we're going to be looking basically everywhere where fans might be. We're going to be targeting that for launch, if it makes sense, of course.